All right, good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you all so much for coming out on this rainy weather the last couple of days. But thank you for persevering and coming out, and especially to those that will be watching and those that are watching live online at this time. I want to, before we get started with this consent decree town hall sponsored by Newark Public Safety, I want to present the angel of this house, the pastor of this church, who is such a wonderful servant of God, someone that is willing to open the doors of the church to allow the community to come in and have various meetings and gatherings. And so we appreciate him so much. And since we're in the house of the Lord, we want to begin with prayer. And so we also want to welcome Pastor Gilmore. Will y'all give God praise for him as he comes and lead us in prayer, and then we will begin this consent decree town hall.
Thank you, Pastor Slaughter. Come on, let's pray. Father God, in the name of Jesus, we do thank you, Lord, for you being God and for you being God all by yourself. We honor you in our gathering on tonight. We always recognize, Lord, that government policing has been ordained by you. So they are first and foremost your servants. And in addition, they are public servants. And so we invoke your presence on tonight. We ask your immense blessings upon our city, our mayor and our council people, and everyone from the Public and Safety Department who has been commissioned to serve. We pray, God, that as we go forward in this meeting, that you will be the Lord of this time. We pray, Lord, that our attentions will be arrested, that we will focus in on the information that's to be given, that our hearts will be receptive, and when it's time for us to speak, oh God, that we will do it in such a way of a spirit of cooperation, and we will speak the truth, but we will speak it in love. So we thank you now, and we seal it. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Thank you again, Pastor Gilmore, and thank your wonderful church family for opening its doors. At this time, I want to present the Director of Public Safety, the one and only Director Frage. Would you all receive him with the clapping of your hands at this time?
I'm not certain what he means by one and only, but I'm definitely proud to be here today, and just to give you a quick brief on current status of the current Newark consent decree that we've been on for the past 7 years. Captain Carrillo gave you a briefing on our status and our going forward. We've met the standards set. We've followed all the guidelines, and the biggest benefit to that is the relationship between the community and the police department that serves that community. Police, fire, and OEM that serves the community. It's important to keep that bond and relationship going forward in order to help our community members feel safe. Perception is reality. If you feel safe and you have a relationship with your police and fire department and have those well-needed conversations to go forward, it definitely helps in us doing our job better, because not only do we have 1,100 pairs of eyes out there trying to look after the community, we have the several 100,000 citizens of this city that support the city and the police, fire, and OEM departments of this city. I know there are other concerns that the city may have in reference to the stolen motor vehicles, which is, I think, a 300% increase in the past. It's even larger than that because it's a statewide epidemic in reference to the stolen motor vehicles because of the Honda Kia Challenge. That's probably the highest criminal matter that we have to help prevent. All the other numbers as far as shooting homicides, shooting hits, robberies, burglaries are down in the city. I can give you those exact numbers that were published on our website shortly. So the police officers are out there. We've made them more dismounted walking posts so they can be visible and present to the community, to have conversations. And the concern for our department was, for putting them out there, is the majority of the time, the only time When you call fire department, it's to help. So they get seen in different eyes. When you call police, it's usually when something's wrong. People don't dial 911 just to say hello. There's a problem. So the opportunities for police officers to have positive engagements are limited when they're answering calls. So we've enacted ways where they can have positive engagement with the community by putting them on foot patrols, by having the community service officers, the school resource officers out there engaging with the community to ensure we have a relationship and a bond with the community so that when we go out there and ask questions, we can have candid conversations. We accept and want to hear all your critiques and requests and concerns. They're met from the traffic light being down or from the streets not being clean, that we're trying to go out there on certain main veins to clear those avenues, because that perception is also reality. We've sent several hundred invites to here today, and we're going to continue to have this quarterly, where Pastor Slaughter will be leading the charge and getting that out there to our community with our CSOs to have quarterly meetings, to have these conversations candidly. Besides the fact that we have 6 precincts meetings, including Metro, for each community, for you to come out and address and they're specifically for you to address your concerns. I know there's a whole bunch of other groups that have meetings, and those are warranted also, but bring those concerns to those meetings, because we assign personnel. The captain of each precinct is assigned to respond to you directly. They give you their email address, their phone numbers to outreach and say, I have a problem with, prostitution on this corner. I have a problem with the kids playing around on this corner. I have a problem with people in front of bodegas making noise and I can't sleep at night. And those are all nuisance problems that help make your life better. So in those cases, we encourage and we want you to show up to those meetings. Come in groups, bring both, come to each ward meeting or each precinct meeting to ensure that your voice is heard. Your voice is being heard is instrumental to us being better. How can we get better if we can have the community come in and have those conversations as what they want and what they need? And that's what we're here for. So I'd like to thank the council members that are here. I see Councilman Crump and the other council members have other events to go to that are here today supporting us, supporting the community. The mayor for his support and the council have given us everything we need to do our job better. Whether it's training, whether it's schools, they haven't said no to us yet. So it's important to help us become better for the community. That being said, we'd like to go forward with, we also have, who I've known for over, in my 27 years of law enforcement, I think 18 of it I've known Ms. Roundtree from my past life. She's council member, Pastor Roundtree, who's been there when I was with the state police coming to Newark for work. So we thank her for being here also. All right, I'll turn it back over to Pastor Slaughter to continue the events today. Thank you.
Thank you, Director, so much for those wonderful greetings and update. Also want to acknowledge the presence of our Chief of Police that is present with us, Chief Miranda. Let's give him a hand. He's here tonight, as well as our Deputy Director, Sharonda Morris, is here with us tonight. And so as the director shared with us, in our appreciation to all the council persons that are present, Reverend Roundtree and Councilman Crump, who are here with us, along with our mayor, who I've been in conversation with, they have the difficult task as a council and an administration of funding this consent decree that you're getting ready to hear more about. They have the difficult task of funding that. Many citizens of the city of Newark don't realize that this consent decree has cost the city well over $25 million already. That money is not paid through grants or federal money. That money is paid out of your pockets as taxpayers in this wonderful city. That's how the consent decree is paid for. Newark has come a mighty long way. It is not the department that was brought under this consent decree several decades ago. It is a more community-oriented public safety department. And I can say without fear of trepidation that this is the best agency not only in the state of New Jersey, but probably in this country. Many people are gleaming from Newark. They're coming to learn how we are doing policing so much better. How do we go a whole year without shooting persons? How we don't have the incidents that other urban municipalities are having. It is because of leadership from the top all the way down. Leadership from our mayor to our city council to our director to our chief deputy director, our command staff, and of course our loyal and wonderful officers. It is because of them that we are doing much better and have become a model city. And so at this time, I want to present someone that sleeps, that eats, that digests everything consent decree related. This person makes sure that every I is dotted, every T is crossed, to make sure that this department is in compliance. And I want to say it's not a matter of us being in compliance. We are in compliance. We are reaching the benchmarks. We are doing what is necessary. And so receive now Captain Carrillo, who is the expert on the consent decree, as he comes at this time to share the presentation and the updates and the leaps that we've made in this area.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Pastor Gilmore, for, again, allowing us the use of this space. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. I really appreciate it. My name is Leo Carrillo. I'm a captain in the Newark Police. I'm assigned to the Consent Decree and Planning Division, the unit responsible for implementing reform. I've been part of the unit for, since 2017, end of 2017, beginning of 2018, so almost 6 years. I got there as a sergeant. I worked there, got promoted to lieutenant, and then eventually got promoted to captain, and still there. I will confess, I studied really hard because I thought there would, I could make room for some other folks. As I got promoted, maybe another sergeant would come in, but the department felt the need to keep me there, so I've been driven to try to do the best job I can to hopefully do a good job for the department. So. And again, I've been on, again, just a little bit about myself. I've been on since 1998, so I've completed 25 years. I'm on extra innings now as far as time. I want to see this through. I want to see this done. So I'm going to hang around until we can figure out where we're going as these months approach. And I'm going to get into sort of those specifics as we talk about like what the timeline might be or what it might look like. Pastor Field, thank you so much for your help. So let's first talk about what actually is the consent decree. So the consent decree is an agreement in principle that the city entered into federal court. Basically, the Department of Justice sued the city of Newark in civil court for a pattern and practice of unconstitutional policing based on some investigations and some issues that had occurred. And we're going to get into that a little bit. And the consent decree was a document to basically settle those concerns. The city agreed that there's work to be done, and we committed to getting that work done. So the consent decree itself is a document, 78 pages, 225 paragraphs of, again, requirements that the department has to meet. So again, my unit is responsible for trying to get those things done. And what do those requirements look like? Things like body-worn cameras, things like policies on use of force, things like policies on stop search and arrest practices, right? So it's all around policy and things like that. So again, let's talk about how we sort of got here, right? So there were complaints made by different groups. One group specifically, ACLU, they came in, did a study. Based on talking to folks from the community, based on interactions with folks that interacted with the police department, they talked to officers. They did their own study and made determinations that there's issues here in the city. And they made determinations that there was pattern and practice of unconstitutional policing. So they made a petition to the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice took that report, that petition. They conducted their own independent investigation. They came down and they were here for actually a good amount of time. And they actually found the same thing, right? So they issued a report, and 2014, 2015, those reports were issued. And that's when we went to court and we started to work out how this consent decree process works. Again, going into court, one of the things that's required is to have an independent monitor. Here in this space, a few weeks ago, the independent monitor, Mr. Harvey, gave a presentation on sort of the status of the police department. So again, we're here to follow up to sort of give the department's perspective, the city's perspective on sort of the work that we've been doing, and to try to answer some more questions. Our goal is to continue to have these meetings more regularly. We were doing them pretty regularly right before COVID. We slowed down. We've been participating in other meetings, sort of joining in other community meetings where we could, but it's time for us to sort of get back and sort of get the word out, again, as we're approaching some important benchmarks and timelines as we go through. Pastor, please. Next slide. Thank you. All right, so the consent decree itself is divided into a number of sections. We can call them chapters. And again, these chapters talk about things like training, community engagement, stops, searches, and arrests, use of force. And again, each section, if you notice what I put in there, are sort of these number of paragraphs that are assigned to those areas. And so just so for informational purposes, this presentation I'm going to put online so everyone will have access to it, and I'll give you that information at the end. So you'll be able to access this information. So again, you see the number of paragraphs. So for instance, for stop, search, and arrest practices, you have 38 paragraphs assigned to that. So a number of requirements within that area. You talk about complaint intake. You talk about, areas in terms of use of force, 37 paragraphs, right? So those are the areas that we had to hit. And we had to really sort of focus on. So what was the process, right? How did we actually get this work done? So the way you give a police officer a job to do is you give them an order. And the way these orders are given, they're given by the director of the agency. And those orders, we call them general orders, is what has to be sort of done to be able to accomplish these requirements in the decree. So the first step was to develop policy or general orders around a lot of these requirements. The process to develop policy took some time. We had some special, some subject matter expert assistance or technical assistance from the monitoring team from the Department of Justice, and we developed best practices based on concerns from the community, based on best practices around the country, and again, input from both DOJ and the subject matter experts from the monitoring team. Some policies took a few months to write, some up to a year, but a lot of the policies didn't start coming out until 2018, 2019, the department. So again, to give you a timeline, we entered, the investigation occurred between 2010, 2014, the two investigations between ACLU and the Department of Justice. We then enter into the consent decree in 2016. We have the independent monitor chosen. We start to work as an agency. We're working through 2016 summer of. We go into 2017, first policy comes out, which is bias-free policing. We continue to work on policies. I get to the unit to end of 2017, beginning of 2018. Policies really start sort of coming out rapid fire at that point. Again, stop, search, and arrest policies, use of force policies, First Amendment right to record policies, things like that start sort of coming out through 19. So now once we have all these policies out, a very important piece of the puzzle is to train officers to ensure they understand the policies, right? So we have to develop training. One of the requirements of the consent decree is there has to be a minimum of 40 hours of training per officer every single year. So that training has to do with community engagement, uses of force, stop, search, and arrest practices, implicit biases, first aid, again, things that we never had before. So like I told you earlier, I came on in 1998. When I came on in 1998, I went through an academy. It was the Newark Police Academy. It was at 1 Lincoln Avenue. We got trained. We were trained well, but that's the only training I ever got. I never got training afterwards. To get training afterwards, I would have to go out on my own. Before becoming a police officer, I worked on an ambulance here in Newark. I still am an EMT. For me to get my EMT recertified, I always had to go out on my own to get my training. The department never pushed that. Today, we have a different department. Today, we require every single officer to go through this training. And we change the training up so they're not getting the same single training every single year, right? So we change it up. We add in there youth engagement strategies. We add in there, again, we have the first aid. We do bleeding control, CPR. We change up the community engagement. We do different, again, we try to keep it keep the training fresh, and we try to get input from the community for that training, again, to keep it going. Next slide. Thank you so much. One of the things that revolutionized the way we handle policy for the officers is implementing this Power DMS system. So when I first started in the police department back in 1998, I would go to the desk, and it'd be like this old guy working at the desk, right? If I had a question about a policy on how to stop someone, I'd have to ask, excuse me, Lieutenant, can I see the policy on how to stop people? And I'd probably get out of here, kid, right? Like there really wasn't much access. Those policies lived in binders. They were behind the desk, collecting dust. And if we needed it, we had to like ask, and if they finally gave it to us, we'd have to go through a book and sort of try to find what it is I'm looking for. Fast forward, because of the consent decree, we got this Power Document Management System. And what we did is we put all our policies within that system. Now all of the policies for the entire department are accessible to every officer through a cell phone. You could literally, they're word searchable because we upload them in Word version into the system. And what you do is you actually can search for a word. Say you want a policy on handcuffs. You put in the words handcuffs, every policy, every memo that has the word handcuff in it will appear for the officer. There is no excuse. You have access to the information now. And we also know when the officer read it, when they signed for it, and we also track training. So when were they trained on how to use force? When were they trained on how to stop, search, or arrest someone? Again, all that information has been made possible because of the system that we're leveraging now. Try to leverage technology, right? The director talks a lot about technology-driven, right? So again, this is one of the initiatives that technology really helped us in making this information available. So again, we talk about the process, right? Developing policy, institute training. Now we're in the phase of auditing, which is to make sure the officers understand what it is that we wrote policy on, and make sure the officers understand what the training was all about. So that's where we are. We're in an auditing phase. Not only are we doing internal audits and inspections, but the monitoring team is here on site almost daily doing inspections of different things. Right now, they're auditing supervisory issues as it relates to uses of force. So they're going through reports, they're going through the logs of videos that were reviewed by supervisors. Again, there's groups checking, the groups that are checking the officers. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the impact that's had. So again, one of the biggest impacts to the agency has been the use of body-worn camera. Now, a body-worn camera program is useless unless you actually review the video, right? And it's one of the things that we do. We require desk lieutenants to review at least 2 videos during their shift, and they have to review videos as it relates to any kind of contraband evidence recovery. So they're literally reviewing the officer's actions. Uses of force, those videos are reviewed. We have 3 different groups of people that are reviewing the force. The supervisor, the officer, we have a special team of internal affairs investigators called the AFIT team that review uses of force. And separately, there's a use of force review board that reviews and ensures that everyone's making the right decisions. And that's had an impact, and I'm going to go through that to show you. Community engagement is like the second chapter of the consent decree. And it's no surprise. The only reason we're able to be as successful in a lot of these areas is because the engagement has been meaningful with the community. What does that mean? So again, as we rolled out a lot of these community and COPS meetings, we sought input from the community on a lot of these policies. We put, where we could and where it was lawful, we put these recommendations from the community into policy, into the training. And again, it's been essential to the process. A lot of the relationships that were built during that community, outreach efforts for policy, a lot of relationships were built during that time, and it continues to today. So again, very, very grateful for the opportunity to change the department in meaningful ways with the help of the community. A lot of this consent decree has the community's fingerprints on it. CCRB was something that was contemplated early on in the consent decree process. There's a section, again, in that civilian oversight area of the consent decree that talks about, again, having sort of some civilian oversight. and an ordinance was issued to establish the CCRB. The CCRB, we went through some legal back and forth. There was some appeals made. It went through court. It went through its process. And finally, there was some final ruling where the CCRB stands. And we currently, we work together where we could and meet and train to continue the work. But there was some stall in how that sort of happened and how it got started. And again, the two areas that the Supreme Court called, again, was concurrent investigations and subpoena power. That's still the stuff that's held up due to the laws that would have to be lobbied to change. Okay. Part of the, again, requirements of the consent decree, and we do now, is we're posting transparency data on our websites. So information on stops, information on arrests, information on the race and interactions of folks, the demographic data, information on internal affairs matters for officers. A lot of that stuff is being posted on the website today. And we're putting it in a way, in a new, most up-to-date website, in a way that's a digestible format. So it's not just numbers on a screen, it's actually interactive tables. Again, things that we're working on and trying to improve on a daily basis. Yep. So again, when we talk about the process around investigations of excessive force complaints, this is one of the most stark sort of changes and what I call a sign of culture change within a department. Again, as we went into this consent decree, 2010, we had 88, for the year of 2010, 88 complaints of excessive force. That means 88 times someone that an officer interacted with, that person felt compelled because of that interaction to go and make a complaint against the officer. It happened 88 times that year. Only one of those interactions resulted in some type of charge against the officer. So on its face, it just doesn't even sound right. So you fast forward into, where we are today. So again, now we're under a consent decree, and you look at years 2018, 2019, and you'll notice that the total number went significantly down, almost 70% reduction in terms of complaints of excessive force. But even more stark, as you go into the 2019, 2020 years, is when we actually established the AFIT team. And what's happening now is you start to see the numbers, how they split. So if you look at 2020's numbers, you had 24 external, so again, down from that 88, but you had 10 generated internally. That means that those 10 people did not make a complaint against the officer. Those 10 complaints were generated internally by supervisors that reviewed body-worn camera and reviewed the reports and found and felt that the force that was used was either excessive or there was no de-escalation that occurred, no opportunities for de-escalation. So again, it's something that we're generating these complaints internally, not only externally. And as you notice, it's had a significant impact on those excessive force numbers because they continue to go down over time. So again, to me, this was one of the most significant numbers to see the difference in how it is that we're engaging with the community. Another metric could be lawsuits, right? We look at lawsuits and monies paid out from 2010 to 2014. Again, in the time period that the department was under investigation, we paid out almost $1.4 million in excessive force lawsuits. You fast forward 2014 to 2019. At this point, we'd been under a consent decree for at least 3 years. And again, for that time period, there was only about $51,000 paid out for 18 lawsuits. Again, metrics to measure where we are in terms of how the officers understand and how to use force. I told you that this presentation will be up. That's the website where I'm going to post that presentation, npdconsentdecree.org. The information for tonight's meeting and the presentation will be available there. Do you have any questions?
My name is Shakir McDougald. I was gratefully born around the corner at Beth Israel. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for everybody who else is here. So, I was at the public safety workshop. I graduated, so I've had the privilege of hearing this conversation and really being able to understand it and take it in. So I first want to say I appreciate everything that the city has been doing and the officers has been doing, especially the community engagement portion, because again, through the workshop, I was able to more than humanize y'all family. When I see some officers, you know, at certain events, they're my family, and that's how it should be. I don't know nobody live at, like ain't nobody helping me with my garbage. I'm trying to find out where the officers at on the block, but I heard it's the guy with the cameras on my block. So I'm gonna ask some real questions because I just want to make sure that we're working towards the same goals. You know, I think that understanding what the goal is, everybody, so that we can all work towards that is definitely important. So I did read in the complaint. There was, so can we first, is there an example of retaliations against individuals who exercise their rights under the First Amendment? I heard that that was one of the complaints. So how has that been addressed?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to answer that. So the First Amendment right to record policy was actually a policy I worked on personally, and we took that as a part of the actual paragraph. So that it was only like a very small part. We felt it was important enough to separate that out, make that its own standalone policy, and train the officers on that specifically, understanding the right to record. There was a couple incidents that led, again, during the time of the investigation that dealt with someone trying to record an officer doing their job in view of the public where there is no expectation of privacy, and the officer grabbed the phone. You know, those incidents were documented and were made part of the complaint, that there was a misunderstanding or a lack of education or lack of training on the officer's part, not understanding what it is, again, that First Amendment right. You know, it seems almost obvious to us now because this is all we've been talking about for, you know, within the department for years at this point, right? So, but it's something that at one point officers really weren't trained and didn't understand it. Where today, this is part of that training, and now they've been getting it every year since we started the training, you know, back in 18. They're getting that training in that First Amendment right to record police activity.
Okay, I just have two more questions. I ain't gonna hold nobody up in case anybody else has questions. One, definitely in my constituency, around my people, we definitely have an issue with predators. And so I wanted to know, and far as the registry for that, is that something that's updated daily so that people know, like, and can protect their children? I had an incident. I mean, I think again, because I was a part of the workshop, I had somebody on call that I could call, you know. Thank God for Detective Mitchell, who was able to help me, and I was able to, you know, find out what I could do because, you know, it's not okay, and I don't, our girls aren't safe, so that's a problem for me, you know. So is that something that you guys do daily? Is that also something that can be accessed?
Yeah, so we have a unit, a special victims unit. Captain Costa runs that unit, and they have detectives assigned to that specifically. On a regular basis, we have Megan's Law outreach, where we have detectives. We pull people in, officers and detectives in from other units to go out and do these notifications. So that work is done on a regular basis, absolutely. And if you need sort of some more specific information, happy
Yeah,
to
like
help you
I've heard of a
offline.
registry. I've never looked at it, but there is a place where people
yeah,
can.
absolutely. Yeah, all that's available online.
Okay.
Like I said, we
on
have
the
posts.
NORC's website, we can.
Links
No?
to it. I have to double check the new website to see if it's actually on there, but it's on the New Jersey State
Okay.
website. Yep,
Okay.
it's statutory what's
Okay.
out there. But like I said, if you have specific questions or concerns, we could help you sort of navigate that.
Right.
And you know, after the meeting, we can, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so my last question is really going to be one of those: how do we unify on this topic? So I live off of Clinton Avenue, which is right by the police precinct, and you know, I see the poverty, I see the pain, you know, but I also understand that the people that I see were the same people catching the bus to the meth clinic who were then addicted to the Suboxones, and so addiction is a real hard issue. But I also understand because I work in LGBTQ healthcare, and so it's about having empathy for people, trying to meet them where they're at. And in the healthcare system, I'm understanding that they're trying to promote safe, clean drugs. From what is explained to me, they see as if people are going to use drugs. I was told people have always used drugs, they're always going to use them. And so I'm trying to figure out, how do y'all do y'all best job in stopping drugs when I have people who are saying what the people want are safe, clean drugs. So to me, that's, okay, you don't want the drugs with the fentanyl, right? But at the same time, understanding how opioids work, you become tolerant and then you need more. So it's like people are hurting out here. And how do we make sure that because they don't know their constitutional rights, that they aren't abridged, because maybe even the officer doesn't know the constitutional rights. And so, unless somebody's checking that the constitutional rights, again, I'm glad that he likes AI. I heard that AI can work with, maybe finding out if constitutional rights were abridged or not. That may be something we can do with this money. Hopefully we pass this audit, but can you speak to that? Because,
Absolutely, yeah,
I'm not gonna allow my people's rights to be abridged, and at the same time, I want the same peace and prosperity that we all do.
100%. I'll tell you what, we don't address opiate addiction the way we did when I started in this police department back in 1998. We were trying to arrest ourselves out of this issue. Today, we're in a different department. We do things that are trauma informed. This is what we try to do. We have this Hope One truck, Hope Run program that we put out. We're working on a new truck that's going to be coming out, again, to address this program. And we go out to areas. We work with technology. So we have things called OD Map. OD mapping gives us heat maps of areas within the city where you have these overdoses that are occurring. We work with the state to be able to understand and gather intelligence so we're able to strategically hit these areas. But we don't go out there alone. We go with officers that are in plain clothes to not be judgmental. Actually, the sergeant sitting right next to you leads the program. We go out there and we have other folks from the community, from different areas, from Office of Violence Prevention, from different groups that come in and provide resources, referrals, Narcan kits, whatever it is, education, 100%. And as far as the AI piece, I hear you. We're looking into the system. So right now we're using Panasonic body-worn cameras. We're going to second-gen Panasonic cameras, but we're looking at an Axon system. This Axon system, they have this company called Trulio that connects to that Axon system that utilizes and leverages AI to listen to all the video. Now, you remember when I talked earlier, when I talked about how many videos could be reviewed? 1 or 2, per shift. This system will review all of it and pick up language and establish, potential, issues with officers, and identify officers. So it's pretty exciting. AI and the technologies as we move forward, there's a lot there. So, yep.
All right, thank you, Captain Carrillo. And we're going to come back to the questions, but we want to pause. I mean, he did an outstanding job, right? Outstanding job. But we want to pause because our mayor has come tonight because this is not only important to us, it is also important to him. And as I said earlier, you got to remember, it is his administration that had to carry this. They inherited this. It is his administration that has to figure out how to shove out these 25 plus million, almost 30 plus million, 40 that we've been paying in this consent decree. So that's a lot on this plate alone, trying to figure out how to pay that from taxpayers' money. So let's give our mayor, the mayor of this wonderful city of Newark, Mayor Raskin Brown.
And you didn't add that I had to figure out how to hire police officers at the same time. They hadn't hired a police officer in 4 years when I got here, so all of that was difficult. You don't get to, that, we don't talk about that in the press, but that's something that you work through. I just want to say, I think, and I appreciate the questions. I think they were on point and great questions that we need to hear, that folks need to address. Honestly, I just think that this department is a lot different than what it was when I was a child. In Newark, I'm from Newark. I live in Newark. I was born and raised in this community. I've been on the receiving end of abuse and on the other side of telling people you need to stop doing it, so forth and so on. So at the end of the day, I'm happy about the results that we see. There's a lot more that we obviously need to be doing. I think that we have the momentum, though, to do those things on our own. That's my belief. We have the momentum, we have the understanding, the things in place to be able to finish what was started because of the consent decree, right? And this is probably one of very few cities that when the U.S. attorney came here and said, you guys are going to be under consent decree, that didn't go hollering and screaming and kicking and trying to fight them and say, oh, and I think part of it was smoother because we didn't do that. We actually embraced that and said, come on, we accept these changes. I'm not fighting with Paul Fishman at the time. I'm not having a fight with you about this. It is what it is. The report, the data is very clear. whatever we can do before you demand us to do anything, we're going to do it, right? Just to show our goodwill that we are interested in changing what's going on. I think it's been for the better, actually, for the department, and not just the community, but for the department itself. I think it made things more professional. It professionalized people. It made them more serious about the work that they're doing every day and understanding the constitutional rights that people have, that there's a way to police a city and secure people in the city without violating people's rights. There are people who believe that that was impossible. That's really what the culture is throughout the country, that it's impossible to police a city, to make it safe without violating people's rights. And I think that we've proven in the city of Newark that that's just false, that those two things can occupy the same place at the same time, that you can make a community safe without violating people's rights, right? You can talk and discuss that. The Office of Violence Prevention, as Captain just said, folks go out, but not only folks that are addicted to drugs, we have the same thing with homelessness. There's a homeless person, Louis Hilario, and the homeless division goes out with police, talk to people, try to remove them, do all the kind of things that's necessary because you want a good quality of life without violating people's rights at the same time. So I'm comparing it, and the thing is, a lot of folks weren't here 10 years ago, 20 years ago, a lot of young folks. So at the end of the day, I'm always comparing it to me, but you always need to compare it to the last day, right? So whatever you did yesterday, you have to do better than what you did yesterday, the next day. And that's really what we should be striving for, how to make it better the next day. Because if we compared ourselves to 15, 20 years ago, we all get gold stars. But and they know it and I know it, right? We all get gold stars. But at the end of the day, we're not comparing ourselves to that. We're comparing ourselves to what we did last year, last month. And we can always do better and get better. And I'm happy with the people that we have working in that direction to make sure that we're there. And we constantly need input and folks saying the things that are right and the things that are wrong with the department and the city out of love, because you live here and you want the city to be better. It helps us when you're honest about what's going on in the community and your feelings about it, when you don't mince your words and you're correct and you go straight forward with what's happening in a fair and kind of just way. That's important. Like what you said was clear. I run across people who talk to me differently than when they talk to me in meetings, right? They say one thing when we outside of the church, then we get in the church, their whole voice change. I'm like, well, that's not what you said outside. So I appreciate when people say, look, I don't want these people on my block, but then also say, I want you to remove them, I just don't want you to beat nobody over the head, right? Because that's fair, and that's right. Like, we don't want all this stuff in front of our community, but we want it done in a proper and professional way, where we're maintaining people's rights at the same time, right? Look, there's a whole bunch of people outside when I came in here, all up and down the street, right, everywhere. I mean, we moved them without putting people in headlocks, without throwing people on the ground, without cussing them out and threatening them. You know, we moved them, told a couple of them to come downtown. I need a job. The job ain't on that corner, man. That's what I told. I mean, you got to come downtown for that, but it ain't on that corner. So having a real discussion with people like, this ain't right. So I think we can do that, and I think our police department is headed in that direction, and I appreciate the direction the department is headed in, honestly and seriously. And I'm not just saying that because I'm the mayor of the city. I'm saying that because I'm a resident of the city. And I've been a resident of this city all my life, and I know what it is to sit on a sidewalk, and somebody take your beeper off and throw it across the street. I know what it is to get smacked in the face or be cuffed inside the old 5th District and pushed to the ground. I know what that looks like. I know what it feels. I've been engaged in that and a part of that, so I know what that feels like. And I know this is not that department. And I can honestly say that as an onlooker, not just as the mayor, that this department is certainly not that place that I saw, as a 20-year-old, 19-year-old in the city. Do we have a ways to go? Yes, but we're certainly not at that place. So I appreciate the momentum and the direction. And I don't think we need to pay, and I don't think we need to be paying millions of dollars a year to get to that place where we need to be anymore. That's just how I feel. In the beginning, should we pay the price? Yes. I thought it was completely necessary for us to do that. Completely necessary. Right now, I'm not at that place. So prayerfully, we can get to a point where everybody feels that way. So I want to thank you all for coming out and being a part of this, and thank the police department as well.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I saw a hand before we had the mayor. I want to make sure I come back to you with your question. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
My question is a community question. Let's see, the guys on the dirt bikes, they come out Saturday and Sunday early, and they push people who drive in a car, push them to the side because they dominate the whole street. So I don't know, when you call and report it, they will tell you that they have to keep a certain amount of noise or something. I don't know how it goes. But anyway, that is a big concern on Springfield Avenue.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. They do at times terrorize community members, and I'm not going to lie to you. It's a difficult job to handle for officers, because we have to sort of weigh the need to apprehend and stop this dangerous behavior with life and the sanctity of the community members of the city, right? So we can't necessarily chase in a car in a way that's uncontrollable, where the person, a lot of times a youth or a juvenile, could crash and potentially get killed. But at the same time, like I said, it's a situation where at times they seem to like terrorize either areas or neighborhoods, and I completely agree. What I could tell you is that there's a number of rules in place, number of laws that have been enacted at the state level and even at the local level here in the city, where people, like say for instance, gas stations are now forbidden from putting gas in those vehicles if they pull up, if it's an unregistered vehicle. They could be fined a lot of money if they're caught doing that, right? But also in that statute, we don't want that person that's supposed to be pumping gas to put themselves in danger. So in other words, if a kid comes out there and puts a gun at them, like, obviously. So, again, as long as it's safe to do so, they're not going to pump gas. And we just tell them that if you do, you get caught, you can get fined. So we're thinking of different ways, innovative ways to sort of address this issue, but I couldn't agree with you more. It is dangerous. We're on it. I can tell you, I worked the Puerto Rican Festival last weekend, or the weekend before. I think it was the weekend before, not this past weekend, the one before. And they were out there, they were riding up and down. We were able to corral like 8 of them at a McDonald's parking lot, because they went to go get something to eat, so we kind of snuck up on them. And we're able to check a number of the bikes. We detained some of the individuals. 3 of them were stolen. We made a couple arrests. So believe me, we're trying. I'm out there trying. We are, but it's a difficult thing. Again, when you got these young kids, 12, 13 years old, riding around crazy, we go at them with a 5,000-pound car. We could put someone's life in danger. So we have to be measured in our approach. We have to be careful. We have to, again, think of all those things. Yep.
I just have a question. So I know that there was a new ordinance that was enforced, thank you very much, that dealt with, we don't call it loitering, call it safe passage, right? And so I know that we have a limited number of officers, but is there something put in place to actually help us to enforce that? And then the second part of that is, and I've asked Captain Wilson about this and all my other previous police captains, that is there a way that we can just focus on low-level quality of life issues that generate revenue, right? And then will deter some of the things that we talk about, right? So if there's, giving out tickets because people don't yield to a pedestrian, right? So that means that people know, right, when you drive past this area, there's potentially a police officer that's going to be here, and that will give you a ticket, right? And be able to, I think if we start to work on some of those low-level, they're not necessarily crimes, but they're revenue-generating opportunities for us, but that also lets people know that we're paying attention. Is there a way that we can, have a unit that does that? That would be extremely helpful, I know, for me and most of the people that live here in the South Ward.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to talk sort of about that and through that a little bit. So definitely understand and have read and become very familiar with the statute in terms of how we could enforce it. So I'm in that unique position that I'm responsible for ensuring officers adhere to the sort of tenets of the consent decree. They adhere to the tenets of all the policy around respecting people's rights. So when something like this comes up that potentially could be sort of maybe confusing to an officer, they give it to, they say, hey, Leo, read this. What can our guys do? So it's been sort of, it's come across my table. So I tell officers, I tell some of the commanders, and we've had meetings about this, is you have to be careful in how you approach, right? We need to be able to basically establish reasonable suspicion that a person is committing a crime before we stop them or depriving them of their right to move freely, right? That is something that was lost on officers for a very long time, right? For no reason we would go up to people and put them up against the wall and go through their pockets, right? That's not the Newark Police Department anymore. You know, we're doing our job in a way that's constitutional. We're basing a lot of the work that we do on intelligence, on doing surveillance, making these determinations. But it doesn't stop us from engaging folks and having conversations with them and explaining to them things that are in place. So we have to balance both, you know, the protection of people's civil rights with whatever ordinances are in place and whatever issues are occurring within the city. So, you know, we have to take a measured approach, but yes, I believe there are plenty of opportunities. And could there be units? I would say that we do have some units that do some of that work right now. Like we have the community focus team. We have teams of officers, a lot of younger, newer officers that'll be put into like walking posts in different areas. And they'll go out and they'll enforce some of those potentially low-level issues or like, you know, quality of life issues. They'll issue summonses. They'll interact with people. They'll have these conversations. So again, to have a specific unit just for that one ordinance, probably, I don't think we have that. That could be something we could definitely talk about internally, and I'll definitely bring that up in the next sort of internal meeting. And again, I understand the frustration, and I'm there with you, but again, it's something that where we have to balance, especially now that we're so close to potentially there being a change of landscape in terms of this consent decree. We want to make sure that, you know, that we don't lose sight of all the work that we've done to this point, to not change training or change the messaging, is that we have to be respectful of people's rights.
Hello, Captain Carrillo. Peace and blessings.
Good evening.
Ms. Sharon.
Yes, Ms. Sharon.
Essex South Ward resident, community activist. I know you talked about the 40 hours of training that each officer receives. In that training, is any training to deal with mental health and domestic violence included in that for our community? And the second part of my question was, I know at the last meeting with Peter Harvey, he talked about the community engagement. So was it anything that came forward on how you will be dealing with the community, whether you will be talking with community members, community groups and stuff, on how Newark Police had been doing with the consent decree? Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Sharon. Absolutely. Yeah, so happy to answer that. So the first part of that was training around mental illness and around domestic violence. So some of the Attorney General mandated or required training involves domestic violence. It's something that officers go through at least twice a year whenever they go for qualification. So officers have to go qualify with their handguns 2 times a year. They go through their qual courses, and in addition to that, they go over uses of force, they go over domestic violence, they go over a number of sort of required trainings. That's on top of the 40 hours. In the 40-hour training, we have a number of different trainings, and those issues around mental illness, special needs are addressed throughout the training. So in areas of implicit bias, right, we address and we talk about those issues, you know, so folks understand what it is potentially, what issues they may be coming against or encountering officers as they get to different scenes. For around use of force, we address and talk about those things against special needs, mental illness. Yeah, so definitely it's something that we're keying in on and then hitting. As far as the Mr. Harvey and his outreach to the community, he has events. They're not as regular as they used to be, but I know they have spoken about potentially having some additional sort of meetings upcoming. I don't have those dates, but we'll make sure we get those dates out and put them up on the website, so we have that information out there for everyone. You're welcome, Ms. Sharon. Good to see you. Are there any other questions?
Yes, I just have one more concern. My concern is the Walgreens and the Dollar Tree store. The garbage out there is running all over. The men, they will come to women, not men, to ask for money. And the same thing with the Walgreens person. I went in and I spoke to the manager. I said, why don't you say something to this man? Because when you come to go in the store, a lot of times you only have enough money to pay for what you're buying. And they be begging you for money. So I know you're afraid to go in your pocket and you're afraid not to. So my question is that whose responsibility is to keep those people from around the door of the Walgreens and around the door at the Dollar Tree store? You know, they just come and ask you for money. They don't want no quarter, 50 cents. They want $1. You know, so that's my concern.
I hear you. So there's a couple things there. So one, I could say it's my job. It's my responsibility. And I don't mean me personally, I mean me as a member of the police department, right? So if you call, we go, we have to sort of, you know, we have to address, we got to help that concern, that issue, right? So there's another piece to that, right? Those stores potentially could hire security, right, for those areas, and potentially they could help. But what I can do specifically, and we're talking about the same Walgreens on Bergen, right near Springfield Avenue? Yep. So what we can do is we can talk to the captain responsible for that area, let him know that there's a concern, and we could do some outreach efforts. So not only from the perspective of like law enforcement, like locking people up, but I want to send the Hope One truck. So we have, again, that's why I say my issue, right? So I could ask Sergeant Phoebus, would you mind taking Hope One truck out to Walgreens? See if we could provide some resources and some referrals to folks that may be in need, that may need that dollar for something else, right? So maybe we can give them some help, some alternatives to what they're going through. We're also going to be working with, like the mayor said, with Louis Solario, again, the homeless czar, and he's going to have a team of folks on the truck with us to be able to address some of these issues. So we're working to think outside the box, because arresting ourselves out of these issues is not the answer. Because I've been locking people up since 1998, and that didn't work. I'm sitting here to tell you now. Working with the community, working with these special organizations, that stuff is working. It's incredible the work that's being done on a daily basis here in the city. So that's how I want to attack it. So you will see the big purple truck there. And we're going to get that out maybe this week.
Yeah, check the dates because you only have a lot of next week.
Okay. And so we're going to get some resources out there. Maybe we get some of those folks some help and some referrals. And you know, we'll go from there. That's how we're going to take it. Sound good? Okay. Any other questions?
I just wanted Pastor Gilmore to wait. All right.
I have a load of questions.
We got another one?
A lot.
Okay.
She asked ladies to go.
Yep.
Thank you so much, sir. I wanted to know the new police officers that are coming about, no civil service test is required. How then are they qualified, other than the fact that they must be a Newark resident, age 18 to 34, a valid driver's license, and drug testing? So that's applicable to any male or female. How are you testing otherwise? Are they taking a psychological test? Or John Doe, Harry, or even the man that was sitting by the drugstore can just get up and go in because he has a valid driver's license and he is a Newark resident and he's within the age of 18 and 34. So how did you differentiate between the two? I welcome the police officers, but I'm perplexed with the fact that you are giving that an example.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the question. Happy to answer that. The list that you're talking about for officers to get on is affectionately known around where I work as the Leo list, because I'm the one that sort of put it together. So folks that sign up and get that list, it's the list that we work on. So that is a way to generate names of folks that are interested in the job. They still go through the intensive and thorough background investigation that even civil service applicants have. So it's just an alternate means for folks to apply for the job. And what happens is they go through the psychological evaluation, they go through a physical evaluation, they go through a thorough background investigation, they go through a medical screening, they go through a number of things, and then they have to go through an academy, and they have to be successful at passing that academy. So the process is the same in terms of the vetting, and it usually takes around 300 to 500 candidates to get 100. You know, usually that's sort of how it works. We have a hiring standard that we follow, and they have to meet that standard. And again, the difference becomes is that once the folks that come off the civil service list, when they're hired as recruits, they are in civil service. The folks that come off the Leo list, they're not civil service until after they graduate the academy. That's the one sort of significant difference between the two. But the vetting is the same, if not more thorough for those that come off the list.
How you doing, Captain?
Good to see you.
All right. My name is Rick Robinson. I'm chairman for the NAACP for the state of New Jersey and the city of Newark. So my questions are more geared towards the consent decree, how much it's costing us as residents, and what's the effectiveness so far. So the first question is there a plan of action for an extension of the consent decree? Because we just heard from two very important people. My pastor, Pastor Slaughter, indicated how much it cost us already, and the mayor indicated earlier that he doesn't see that we need it. So is there concern that we're going to be engaged in an extension? Because that's more money for the residents.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Good to see you. Yeah, so happy to address that. So the consent decree itself talks about time frames, right? So the initial time frame was 5 years. So if we got into it in summer of 2016, summer of 2021 would be the year that we sort of got out of it, unless we didn't meet full and effective compliance. In that same area of the consent decree, paragraph 224, 225, 223, around there, it talks about an extension of 2 years. We contemplated that extension, and we renewed, and that brought us from 2021 to 2023. So the end of this year is a potential court conference where, again, motions may be filed by the city and/or the Department of Justice as it relates to what's going to happen after these sort of 7 years. Could we prove that we've met full and effective compliance? Could we prove to the court that we've done so? And if we didn't, could we prove that we've met a number of the requirements, maybe 80% of the requirements, and we still have another 20% to go? What will happen in court is unknown to me. I don't know, and the ultimate decision is up to Judge Arleo, Judge Cox Arleo. She's the one that's the presiding judge over this case. So ultimately, whatever motions are filed by the city and/or the Department of Justice, and what position the judge takes, that's something that's sort of out of our control. We can control what we can, which is that we are doing the work day in and day out. We've had great successes. And I will quote one of my chiefs that sort of said this to me the other day, is in our, as we strive for perfection, we're starting to achieve excellence in certain areas, right? So again, we're trying, and again, and like the mayor said, by no means are we done, right? This work has to continue, and it has to continue beyond. If the consent decree sort of ends, a new process has to sort of emerge, which potentially could be working with the CCRB in maybe in a different way, or in a more effective way, or whatever sort of we look at afterwards, after the consent decree. It's something that would have to happen, regardless.
Okay, because the last 3 weeks ago we were here.
Yes.
U.S. Attorney Selinger and Federal Monitor Harvey indicated that we may be moving towards an extension.
Yep.
All right, so, I know this is strategic, legal strategy, if you will, but that's a concern for a lot of people in the city of Newark, especially when they call it NAACP. My second question is another NAACP concern. Hypothetically, Subject A files a complaint against an officer for the Newark Police Department with internal affairs or professional standards. That matter has not been concluded, or it has been concluded. Now, if it has been concluded and he has to go towards administrative decisions from the public safety director, all right, after that has been included, because we're looking at right now, legislatively, the CCRB cannot engage with subpoena power and concurrent investigation. And we're fighting for that. But we're going to look to work with the Newark Police Department, Federal Monitor, and everybody who's a party to the situation. So let's go back to Subject A. He had his internal affairs. They had their finding. Administratively, he's been dealt with. So can the CCRB engage after this, or is he still under investigation, if you will?
So sort of let me give that back to you. So if an officer commits a crime, right, or is suspected of committing a crime or is accused of committing a crime, that would not be investigated by the Newark Police, the Internal Affairs. That would be investigated by the county prosecutor or the Attorney General, depending on the severity of the incident.
Well, let me stop you right there, Captain.
Yep.
They file a complaint with Internal Affairs
Yep.
and Professional Standards,
Yep.
thinking that they are going to be the department that handle this.
Yep.
Because a lot of our complaints that come to the NAACP, they don't get any kind of notice indicating that this situation has been brought up to the Essex County Prosecutor's Office. Let me just pull that in there.
I got you. Yeah. So say, for instance, that the officer's accused of, say, taking money out of somebody's pocket. So even though Internal Affairs, Newark PD, receives that complaint, we still have to forward it to the county for them to look at the sort of the substance of the complaint. And they may run with it criminally, but if not, and we sort of handle, then the investigation will be conducted to its logical conclusion, whatever that would be, and then it's put forth for whatever, either trial or disciplinary hearing or disciplinary process, whatever that may be. Now, in terms of CCRB role in that sort of process after it's concluded, my understanding is that CCRB would have access to the investigation and review it, right? So you all would be able to review the contents of the investigation to see that it met its logical conclusion and that people were sort of interviewed and video was obtained and statements were taken, and you'll be able to sort of review the logical conclusion of that investigation.
Afterwards,
Yes,
not concurrent.
not concurrent,
So-
according to the way the statute reads
Yes.
today. Yep.
So these are AG guidelines, everybody, that we have to follow involving the CCRB. They cannot engage in concurrent, which means that if the police department is involved with an investigation, the CCRB has to wait. So I want you to understand that. They have to wait until they conclude their investigation, until they conclude the administrative measures. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay, so as an NAACP person, I don't have anything against the police. I really don't. I work with them well. I go to all the meetings, and I try to be the person in the community, like a couple of you guys already mentioned. Laurie already knows that. But as Mayor Baraka indicated earlier, we have a way to go. So we look forward, CCRB, I should say, looks forward to working with Captain and your consent decree team and the public safety record and federal monitor. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
Last question from Pastor Gilmore, and then that's going to be it. We're already well
Yes,
over
we
time,
are.
and I don't want to ruin the hospitality of the church. So Pastor Gilmore will give us our final question.
All right, really, my question, my brother asked my question. Yeah, because I heard the frustration, in the voices. And I wanted to know what was going to be the process, remembering what Peter Harvey said. And I guess what I wanted to know in addition to that was, does the community play any role in that? As pastors, we get asked quite often for character letters. I didn't know whether or not that would be something that the community could write on behalf of the police department to give before the judge, to be able to say the progress that we see that has been made, and that we think that enough progress has been made where either the reins can be let go completely or they should be reduced significantly. So that's really what my question was. But I hear you saying that you really didn't know exactly how the process was going to go.
Yeah,
But
unfortunately, we don't have control over that part of it. We sit through the audits. We work with the monitors. We work with the Department of Justice. Just today, I was communicating with DOJ to get them data and information on various things that they're looking to do, because they're doing their own sort of research. So the community's been part of this from the very beginning. So having your support, having your input is immensely valuable and absolutely part of the process. So appreciate always being there for the PD in these good times and rough times. No, again, I think it's great. I think it'd be a great suggestion. And like I said, I don't know exactly. There's potentially an impending government shutdown, federal government shutdown at the end of the month, which may delay our court proceedings that were scheduled for October. We had a court date scheduled for October 4th, which I believe are delayed. Yeah, I mean, as this comes up, and I think having support of the community has always been the only way that we're getting through this whole process.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for coming tonight. Online, thank you.